Welcome to the Inspired Evolution, and it is such a treat to be here today, especially because I have the vibes from Martyn Sibley. Martyn, how are you today?
Oh, good, thank you. Good to be here.
Such a treat to have you here. For those tuning into Martyn's vibe for the first time, Martyn puts it very humbly. He's a regular guy who happens to have a disability called Spinal Muscular Atrophy. In short, it's SMA. Means he can't walk, lift anything heavier than a book, or shower himself. However, despite all of this, he runs Disability Horizons. He's the author of Everything is Possible. He's got an awesome podcast called The Martyn Sibley Show, which is all about weaving a world beyond disability, which I can't wait to have this conversation with you. And he has a degree in economics and a master's in marketing. He loves adventure travels. He's even visited Australia. He's been down under, so I can't wait to talk about that. And he's got some great people in his life, including his soulmate. He drives his own adapted car, runs his own business. He's even flown a plane, which is something I haven't done, so I'm inspired by that. He enjoys skiing and scuba diving and living independently on Earth. Brother, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
So tell us about everything. Like, so how did you set up? How did you come to decide that you're going to run your own business and set up, like, let's say, Disability Horizons, and then where that's going at the moment?
Sure. So, I mean, I always had some entrepreneurial spirit in me. I think from a younger age, I always had some unconscious thoughts around one day running my own business. I've always read the kind of entrepreneurial books. Like, I love Richard Branson and all those kind of books. I loved all that stuff. So yeah, it was always there. Interestingly, I didn't plan to both work as an employee and be a business owner, where you're like serving disabled people. Because when I was growing up as a teenager, it almost seemed cliche to me that, like, because I'm in a wheelchair, like, that's too obvious that I would work in that area, and I wanted to, like, almost work anywhere else but that, just to not be cliche. So that was quite an interesting thing. But when I came out of uni, I got a job in London at like a really big NGO for disabled people, and it was a bit of a pragmatic step that I knew that they would have things covered regarding access for my wheelchair to the building, and they would be, supportive and nurturing that I have my disability and I'm looking to get out in a career. And then their whole purpose was about empowering disabled people. So I guess it was like a safe step. And then I did like 5-6 years there, a lot of learning and development, a few promotions, and I suddenly was earning good money. And I was, in a way, I'd made that, I'd sort of achieved that goal that I'd set myself in the career sense. But, I wasn't happy. I had this dread about getting up every morning and going to the same office, like sitting in the traffic in London and stuck at my desk and being in all these meetings that just didn't feel purposeful. And as I say, that the charity did really good stuff, but there was a lot of barriers and ceilings I felt at the time for me to really untap my own potential. And so I was just like, I've got to get out of here sometime. So I think that was when I really started pushing and realized I wanted to run my own business.
That's amazing. And so in terms of the purpose being empowering, like the purpose of the charity that you're working with is to empower disabled people. I find that quite intriguing, because now you're not in the space of empowering just disabled people. You're traveling all over the place, empowering people far, wide, center, left, right, up and down.
Yeah, I mean, so the start off of the business when I left, it was called Scope. The charity was called Scope. When I left Scope, I started blogging, and I was blogging very much about kind of life with a disability. And my aims were still very much about, I guess, like when I was a teenager, if someone was like 10, 20 years older and was doing a load of cool stuff, it wouldn't have mattered whether I did exactly the same things. Just to know it was possible would have been really, really powerful. So that was my big reason, my why I started blogging, was for other disabled people. Because during my time at the charity, I then was actually, very taken by the fact that there's a lot of people out there with some kind of disability, and I've got this, like, a calling, it felt, to share my personal story and help, make them feel that the world's actually open and accessible. And even if it's not open and accessible in the physical way all the time, there's still so many opportunities to go and grab. So that kind of blew up into being on, like, media. I was always on BBC and writing for newspapers and being on the radio. And then that led to starting the magazine, which is Disability Horizons, which you mentioned at the beginning. And we get like 50,000 readers a month now from disabled people and their families. And then from that, we started Accomable. I say we because my friend was a co-founder of the business as well. And with Accomable, we were like, this is going to be the Airbnb for disabled people. And then 2 years later, last year, we sold it to Airbnb. So that was like a really cool neatening of the circle. So yeah, I mean, like, that there was a lot of focus on disability, but the last couple of years, and particularly with Mindvalley, where you and I met in Tallinn at Mindvalley University, I've gone through a lot of personal growth and exploring spirituality and things like that. And I've come to realize that I shouldn't limit myself just to supporting disabled people. So the last year, I've really shifted that we're still doing all that stuff for disabled people. We're not stopping that. We're not leaving them now, but really building on it and using my experiences to help all people.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to try and craft my next question as on the fly, which is going to be a bit, hopefully I can do it justice. So you mentioned early on that you went through this piece where, initially it was a bit cliche for you to perhaps work with disabled people, just because you were growing up in a wheelchair as well, and you went through that. Perhaps, it was like trying, like an identity repulsion, almost like, I don't really want to find my own way. And then you almost had to like integrate that to then be like, no, like I'm going to own it, and then go, work for the charity and empower other people in the same position, and wait to talk about how important it is to have a like doing the work that you're doing, but not just for yourself but for others as well. But then now you're almost coming out on another iteration of all of this, in terms of you're now finding your story beyond the story of disability again.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's three themes that I now sort of standing for. I think one is about our beliefs. It's a lot of the stuff that Vision talks about with Brules and the culture scape. That like if we understand what our beliefs are and check if they're serving our true self, then we really can be the captain of our own destiny. So there's a lot of that I believe in about recoding, creating your own destiny. The second area is very much about social media, that using blogs, podcasts, videos, building community, anyone can change the world. It's like shifted the whole dynamic, that we've got the tools and everything we need now to really make an impact. And, of course, we're all aiming for like millions of hits and like big numbers. But for me, changing the world isn't just about scale. It's included, but it's not only scale. If you have a conversation or a podcast conversation, whatever it might be, a blog post that helps one person, like I sometimes get parents writing to me saying like, oh my God, we found out my child was going to be disabled. All of the medical profession was like, oh, it's bad and the life's going to be not good. And then they're like, oh, and I read your blog and it just made me see that my child has got a bright future. That for me is changing the world. That really is a big deal. So I think that whole thing about social media is a big theme. And I think the third theme is about freedom and being able to go out and live life and enjoy yourself while you're still changing the world. And so when I left Scope, whilst I had all the business stuff, and it was amazing that it surpassed my own dreams of what I hoped I could ever do with the businesses, I also wanted to get out of the office, get out of London, and then to be able to like travel and do all these projects around the world while I'm running my business. I think everyone should if they want to, then they should do that kind of living the dream stuff. So I think they're the three areas that all of my being has taught me, and I want to get that out to the world and encourage other people to see that.
What do you think it is that's unique about your journey that's like really informed this process of helping people find freedom?
Sorry, say that again, Amrit.
Like, what do you think it is about like your unique like approach to life and your unique relationship with life, or is it unique, your relationship with life, that is
I got you. Yeah, okay. I was actually chatting to someone else about this yesterday, that like, and if you deliver it wrong, you just sound like an arrogant asshole. But like,
with humility,
we're all unique, you know. Like, so we can all learn about beliefs and about blogging and about, you know, living your dreams as an example of those three themes.
Of course.
But my experience, partly with my disability, definitely has made me who I am. The fact that like I can't do a load of stuff physically, I've had to fine tune some of my other strengths. Like, I think I'm a good communicator, and that's partly because it's more important, because I have to have carers that help me with lots of things in the day. So I guess, like that, the disability has been a part of it. But, you know, like my granddad, my mum's side, he was born in Lithuania, and he got captured by the Nazis in World War II and was in like prisoner of war camp, and then ended up in England. And so like his story coming through my mum as well definitely is why I'm very passionate about no one being like a minority group or oppressed or excluded. And all the Trump and Brexit stuff winds me up so much, partly because of my granddad's story. So like that's a big part of who I am now as well. So there's a lot of different areas, but in the end, it's everything that I've been through that makes me who I am now, and that's unique, you know, not in the arrogant arsehole way though.
No, of course, it didn't come across in that way at all. It was really helped to illustrate your passions behind freedom and why you're supporting so many people in that. I'm really fascinated by this sense of this conversation that we have to have, because it's you and I, and we connected at Mind Valley. The idea of like a blogger's life, in terms of sharing and, in this conversation, wherever it may go, I would love to sort of also have the conversation on what I touched on before, which is, you said quite poetically that, your why was for others. Your why was not just for, for yourself. It's just so that other people knew that there were possibilities that were open to them as well. That's, quite succinctly putting together quite a few deep, really rich themes, which is like firstly getting in touch with your why, and secondly, trying to like be of service is such a potent way to live your life. So is blogging like a clear, does blogging satisfy that for you, or is what's going on in that?
Yeah, it's not only blogging that satisfies that, but it definitely, in the early days, it really helped me to explore myself more than serve others. So when I started blogging, I was like, God, what am I going to write about? And obviously the whole the ego stuff of like, oh, who's going to read it, and are they going to like it, and all that sort of stuff too. So and I think in the end, I look back and realized that I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I knew there was a broader aim of helping disabled people and changing attitudes of society about disability. But it was only that going through that first year that I started to develop my writing style and the kind of things that I enjoyed writing about, and the kind of things that I realized the community needed. And I think there's quite a dance between the two, that part of it is that we are creative beings. And so if my blog isn't enabling me to express in the way I want to express, then there's no point doing it. But equally, if the community I'm serving are like needing certain things, and that's my responsibility to give them what they need as well. So yeah, I think there was a real sort of dance going through that first year of coming to terms with my purpose, my style, and how I could serve better.
Yeah, I find that really inspirational, because we were just talking about this before we clocked onto the conversation. It's literally just been 12 months for me doing the Inspired Evolution and basically documenting the podcast process.
Congratulations, man! That's awesome.
Thank you so much, brother. But yeah, it's been this fascinating thing, which I didn't realize this to be a consequence of what I was doing. But the amount of clarity you get from the process is like no one's talking about this. Like I don't understand why no one alludes to this. It's like, go out and just try and don't even create, just curate content. And just see who you are in those things that you found interesting, because you went to all the energy of having all these conversations and you end up finding some aspect of yourself. It's like, this is what makes me tick and this is what I get out of bed for, and then on the back of that you can totally create whatever you want creatively from that, whether it's a business or whether it's something entrepreneurial, or maybe it's like you find your ideal job because you realize what you want to do. But
that's really important, that point, like, because I think some people get het up about we're into this sort of entrepreneurial is the only way, that you have to be an entrepreneur and hustle and take risk and like work 55 hours a day, all this kind of stuff. And actually some people are better suited to being employed. Fortunately, there are like Humanity Plus companies that Vision talks about, where the mission of the company is good and that's changing the world. And if your role is like not trying to be all things to all people, but you're really good at a specific thing, and there's much more opportunities for flexible working now with companies. Like, it's totally cool when people still are employed, and I think that's really important to put that out there.
How did you how did you first come across Mindvalley as well? I'd love to have this conversation with you.
Sure, yeah. So I think it was before the Barcelona was last summer, right? The first Mindvalley U, and then maybe like half a year before that, a friend said to me, you should read this guy Vision's book. I think he'd like it, because he knew that I read a lot of business and inspirational biographies and stuff like that. And I read it, and he was right. I loved it. It was, it was both inspirational, but it was really practical as well, with how to actually implement some of the things in the Code of the Extraordinary Mind. And then we were in Barcelona anyway, because I get invited now quite a lot by tourist boards to come and do blogs, so that I maybe don't earn from those trips, but like, it's cool because it's a free trip, right? So we get invited around the world and all that kind of stuff. And we happened to be in Barcelona. Now, at the time, because I'd read the book and I loved it, but I wasn't as deep into Mindvalley. I don't know whether we would have gone elsewhere for Mindvalley U, but like, we were in the same city, so it was like, well, look, let's go and check out this really synchronicity. And like, we signed up and we went along and we're like, what the hell is all this about? It's the next level shit, and so we were both, because Kasha, my fiance, we were both there, and we were kind of like, I don't think we really let ourselves go in Barcelona. We were a bit more cautious, and we were just trying to work out what it was all about.
What you're
in. But then when afterwards I look back, the one talk I got really a lot out of was from Rock Thomas. And I realized that I had that age-old other kind of myth about, if you're an artist or if you're someone that does good, you shouldn't earn money from it. And so Rock blew that out of me in Barcelona. And since that was later that year that Accomable sold to Airbnb. Now, that, I'm not saying it was 100% tied, but I'm sure that I let myself be more open to abundance. And then since then, I've been invited to give talks and earn well, and I've been able to do consultancy and earn well. Whereas for like I left Scope in 2011, and until last year, like 6 years, it was hard financially. It was a struggle. So I think for me, that was Barcelona, was unblocking my financial abundance. And then afterwards, I did Wild Fit with Eric, as in the online quest.
Yeah.
I did Gym Quick, and there was another one, it'll come back to me later, but and load of master classes. And so like when they then said it was going to be in Tallinn, Estonia, there was no doubt. It was like, yeah, we're going to Estonia now.
How magical is Estonia? So the question I want to ask you though is, like the weaving through all this Mind Valley stuff is, there's a big premise that we define as rules.
Yes.
Bullshit rules. And I know, like, especially your situation, you would have interfaced with a lot of bullshit rules. Like, people would have told you a whole bunch of stuff you could do and a whole bunch of stuff you couldn't do, which is like, for those listening in to what a rule is for the first time, a rule is basically a bullshit rule that someone has like gone and like made it into a rule, but it's completely bullshit, right? A bullshit rule, for example, is like, you have to marry somebody of the same culture, which is complete bullshit, right? But it's a cultural thing in some cultures. So like, I'd love to pick more like your relationship with rules.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I know, like, I mean, my parents are really cool. Like, they're definitely a big part of why I am this, adventuring, globe-trotting kind of person. When I left my job, my dad was kind of pissed, and because he was scared, like, we learned a lot in Mind Valley that when people are being negative to you, you have to remember that there's something that is pushing them to do that. Yeah. And so my dad, I'm sure, has fears about, security and finances, and that's all from a good place for his son. But equally, like, I knew it was right that I had to get out and, and leave and do what I've done. So yeah, I guess that was a rule maybe for my dad, was that you have to have a 9-to-5 safe job. Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, like, mum and dad are very supportive. The media, I'm talking now about with a disability, the media has this weird extremity where you're either like draining the government of money and you're sort of costing the state because of the needs you have, and you're like a bit of a burden to society. And the other extreme is like, oh my God, this person left the house even though they're in a wheelchair, and how amazing is that? So it's like triumph over tragedy. Yeah. And so what I've tried to work for is that, like, and that's what, when you read talked about my bio, is a regular guy, because I think if I'm able to help disabled people but I become like a celebrity, then there's too much of a disconnect. So it's really important to me that I continue just to be how I've always been, despite the amazing opportunities and the successes, so that they really resonate with that you don't have to be some like super duper amazing achieving person, that you can do everyday things, and that is achievement, and but not to almost have that sort of local media or the national media having those extremities about being disabled. Does that make sense? Totally.
Yeah. Not letting the rules of everybody else being enforced in terms of also the projections that come from that. I have to reflect though, like, you've flown a plane and I haven't. So there is something going on there.
Yeah, because I'm picking, I was again talking to someone about this yesterday, that the word inspirational is not particularly liked by disabled people because of that brawl I was talking about with the media. But then actually, like, when like something like with the flying the plane, that is inspirational to disabled people and people without a disability, and that should be fine. But there are a lot of disabled people that are very sensitive to a certain language, and the reason is that when you're from an oppressed group, language is one of the few tools that you have that you can own and dictate the terms of. And it's been over time, the reason we say disabled people in England and the UK is that we're disabled by the barriers of society. We're not disabled by the medical condition that we have. And so instead of like curing or fixing ourselves with the medical condition, it's about society being more open and inclusive to difference. And so that language has been really important, but then sometimes it can spin off where you're having arguments over one word instead of like getting out and changing the world, you know? So there's a balance between that. But yeah, the word inspirational has been a very interesting debate in the disability community. But in terms of your question, like, yeah, for me, to be inspirational for flying a plane is totally cool, because I think it opens people's mind up to what's possible, and that hopefully evokes new aspiration in their mind about what they can do as well.
Thank you so much for that. Definitely inspires me. And yeah, so interesting. I just want to throw my own 2 cents on the inspiration conversation.
Sure, yeah.
I've got a podcast called The Inspired Evolution. Like, that makes me an authority on something.
Absolutely.
Totally kidding, guys.
Not.
No, I am. The Inspired Evolution. But yeah, I feel like inspiration is purely to inspire is to breathe. I feel like actually all of us are inspiring.
To
take that moment to acknowledge and just tune in for just a moment. Every single person. I've always actually, there's this crazy little thing. On the bottom of my CV, even when I was applying for corporate jobs, I would write this, right? That I like connecting with people, and that I literally write this, which is every person is a book from whom you can always learn from a page or a chapter. And I remember sitting in interviews and people going, "What is this that you've written on your CV, mate?" I was like, I don't know. I guess in my heart I'm a philosopher, but I totally believe that, that everybody is actually inspiring. In one way, shape, form, or another, because we're all
definitely.
And there's always something going on there.
Yeah, it's like the point we made earlier about how we're all unique. Yeah, like even if 2 people can have the same, even like twins can have the same genetics, the same nurture with parenting and everything, but they can be very different people because of the different experiences they go through in life. That makes them unique, and then, as you say, that makes them a book to learn lots from.
Well, we're talking about experiences. I'm really curious as to what experiences are inspiring you at the moment. So what is on your horizon?
So like kind of like what I'm planning with the next plans and stuff. Yeah.
Masterminding at the moment.
Yeah. So I've been doing a ton of learning around online courses, which interestingly, so the point of the course is that I really want to unpack those 3 themes we talked about earlier, and then be able to offer that to people as an online course. But going through, there's a guy actually, I think he's based in Sydney, called Taki Moore. Do you know Taki Moore?
No, I'll look him up.
So he kind of works under the $1 Million Coach, but it's very similar to what Ajit and EverCoach do. It's that empowering coaches, to be more impactful. Yeah. And the course I've done with Taki online is about kind of scale and automation as much as about how to unpack what your course is and who it's for. And in learning a lot more about the nuts and bolts of digital funnels and conversion, because like I've been blogging and essentially marketing very well for a long while, but there was a gap in my knowledge about how you take the people that are really engaged and then you're able to move them towards something else that you're offering, like a course. And then because I run like a social media marketing agency where we work with organizations in the disability space, from charities to small businesses to large businesses, that's been a real big deal, that I can now help them with their like funnels and lead magnets and conversion webinars and stuff like that. So yeah, this one course has been amazing for me to evolve to become like a teacher and serve people better with learning courses, transformational learning, because that's the other thing. Like I did some courses 5 years ago, but it was all content. It was all the why and the what. And what I also learned is that when you're trying to teach and transform people, it's the exercises, the tools, the accountability, and the community that is what is the valuable part of an online learning course. So yeah, like a ton of learning and planning to launch this course soon.
Amazing. I have to ask you, like this entrepreneurial like mindset is like ever present. What was the seed to that? I know you were testing some of it to your parents, but like where do you think that sparks from?
I guess to some degree it's just always been in me. I'm trying to think of like any kind of moment that might have created it. I mean, I definitely think there's a trend that disabled people have to hustle, like to get. So my wheelchair costs like 20 grand because it does all sorts. It's like quite special with the seating, and it can like move around electronically, so I can be more comfortable in the day.
Yeah.
So like, luckily in Britain, that's pretty much funded by the state, but there's still a ton of work to actually, get the different pots of funding to apply for it, to know how to apply for it. So even when you're dealing with the more like government sort of run projects about supporting you to have carers and equipment, it still is a hustle. And when I was like 19 and I went to university, I couldn't rely on my mum and dad to do my care, so I had to have a care team at the city I went to. And so without realizing it, I had to manage a team and do budgets and stuff like that just to get out of bed and to have a shower. So there's definitely a lot around the disability that instills entrepreneurial sort of skills and knowledge in you. But I think that they're like the push factors. But I think I've always just been a dreamer and want the world to be a better place. And I think that entrepreneurialism is the best way to have an impact and make the world better, really.
I really value your pragmatic approach to things. It's really refreshing. Thank you so much for sharing about that. I have to ask: is there a message in your heart that is just the message that you just burn to share?
I don't know about like a very succinct one-liner, but
Take your time. We got all the time. This is free media.
I guess it's around everything. I love that. I think it's around that you only live once sentiment. So if there's anything in someone else's heart, like listening to this or watching this now, that they kind of know it's in there, but they're not doing it because they're scared. And maybe they're scared of what family think, or what, if they're scared of failure, like whatever it is that's holding them back. I just want to urge them to just try it, because I think I often do this exercise where if you're on your deathbed and you look back, what do you want to look back on? Because it's so easy now to get caught up in like bills, family drama, friends drama, all the kind of dramas we have day to day. But when you're on your deathbed, none of that matters. Like really, none of it will matter. But what matters is that, again, it's around the mind value things of what experiences have you had, what growth have you had, and what impact have you made. And so, I'm just always urging people from my heart to really sit back and consider those things.
Yeah, it was. Thank you so much for sharing that. One of the most profound experiences I've had, which was pretty radical, was a friend of mine and a couple of friends we got together and we wrote our own eulogies. Firstly, as they would be read in today's present term, and then also as we would have liked to have, we would have liked to have heard, which is similar to what you were sharing. And then we went out to the beach and we actually buried each other in the sand, whilst one of us read our eulogy to the other one. And Yeah, it was it was pretty traumatic, to be honest. It was
Yeah,
you're buried in the soil and the weight of the soil, and you like this real like defining realization, very full stop like in its nature, which was like, oh,
mm,
I came from the earth, I'm going to return to the earth.
yeah,
And also in the background having your eulogy, the one that it is written
yeah,
to you, and knowing in your heart that you wrote a eulogy that the way that you wanted it to be read.
yeah.
There was nothing that has like really just polarized more action
Yeah, I
in.
was gonna say, wow.
Yeah, it's been really profound. So thank you so much for sharing that message, because it's a really
Man,
profound one. Thank you.
that gave me goosebumps. That did. That's really cool. Wow.
Sharing your message. Yeah, I really want to just really want to take the time to really thank you for showing up today and sharing so openly. And there's just the humility with which you share and the openness with which you share is really refreshing. I know there's so much that you're working on now and that you've been working on, and it's just all like flowing into so much. The word that comes to mind is thriving, and I'm really inspired by that. So thank you for that, and also for all the work that goes into into being here today. Like in the past, all the work that you've put into yourself. I know journeys go up and down and up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
Riding that wave and not just doing that for yourself, but also like you said, trying to source some inspiration not just for yourself but for others as well. And while I'm doing the thank yous, thank you for the future and whatever you're going to create, because I can feel it's already got a massive amount of potency and some yumminess behind it. So thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you for having me on. It's really, really cool to chat and explore all these issues and themes. So,
I just want to ask you my one last question, which is by no means my least question. It's the question I ask everybody that comes on the show is beyond the skin suit, beyond the name, beyond all the work that you do in the world, who is Martyn?
yeah, I've again. It's funny how the synchronicities. Do you remember Justin wrote about the 3 words that describe people?
Yeah, of course.
And so I put it out on my Facebook to see what words people gave me, and there was like a lot of things like kind, capable, inspirational, funny, that kind of stuff. And so I then reflected if I think that is me, because it's back to that thing about beliefs and rules, that actually if what I heard didn't resonate with who I wanted the world to see me as, I could change that now. But it felt right. That felt like that is me. I feel like I am those things behind all of the facades and the labels and everything like that.
So yummy. Thank you so much for sharing, brother. And for those that want to get in touch with you, the easiest way to possibly do that would be, obviously there's the podcast, which is the Martyn Sibley Show. That's spelled Martyn, Sibley, Sibley.
Yep.
Is that the easiest place, or is there other ways people?
Yeah, well, my website is martynsibley.com, spelt how you just said. Yeah. And being a blogger, I'm all over Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So it's not that difficult to find me.
Yeah, on the ground, on the internet, in the skies, in the ocean, scuba diving. He's everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Is it a man? Is it a plane?
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, brother.
Awesome. Take care, buddy. And we'll catch up soon, yeah?
For sure.